千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Eric Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. Let's get back to finish up Tao Te Ching chapter 10. Tao Te Ching chapter 10 is the mystic virtue chapter. This is easily one of the most profound and important chapters out of the entire Tao Te Ching. 玄德 is mystic virtue in Chinese, and it is talking about this virtue that can be difficult to understand. And I do want to talk about exactly why that is. First, a quick review and recap of what we talked about. This is the chapter itself, 17 lines, which we were able to divide into 3 sections. Last time, we focused on the last section, the third summary final section. And that is, of course, line 13 all the way down to line 17. Line 17 wraps it up with the title of the chapter, 玄德, mystic virtue. Now, as we went through the lines last time, what I talked about was that Tao Te Ching 10 had a very close correspondence with Tao Te Ching 51. So 51, of course, numerically is far apart from 10, but the texts are echoes of one another. So to illustrate that principle, I went through the last section, line 13 to 17, one at a time, to demonstrate that exact correspondence. So just a quick recap for line 13. Line 13 says, bearing it, rearing it. And I pointed out, showing Tao Te Ching 51 on the right-hand side, that the characters, the 4 characters in line 13 are repeated twice each in 51, and stated a little bit differently, but more clearly. So in 51, it maps to Tao produces them, the same 2 characters as the first 2 characters in the 4-character line that we have in 10. And it is specifically stating that it is the Tao that produces them or bears them. And when I say bearing it, I mean giving rise to it, giving birth to it. Same idea as producing it or creating it. And that applies to us as well, because every single one of us is a mini engine of creation. We create things in our lives. So rearing it is the same as raising or nurturing. So you can see in Tao Te Ching 51, I'm translating the same meaning, but I'm using synonyms to give it an extra dimension. but they do mean the same thing. And it clarifies that the rearing it part, the nurturing part, raising part, that is actually 德 or virtue. So Tao is the source of life, and then 德 virtue, that's the forces of the environment that nurtures the life that has arisen. So that is the first correspondence we talked about last time. Then we have another one down in line 16. Line 16 says, raising without domination. And what I said previously was that you won't find those exact characters except at the very end, but there's a section that further expands on it. It doesn't use the same characters, but it's talking about the same meaning. When we say raising without domination, what we're talking about is that Tao and virtue, they give rise, they create and nurture life, and yet there's no domination of life. So in 51, we see the lines from 5 to 9 that basically they expand on the meaning and explain it. Therefore, the myriad things all respect the Tao and value virtue. The respect for Tao, the value of virtue, not due to command, but constant nature. So there's no domination that forces respect. In life, we know that when someone is domineering, it actually erodes respect. So here, what it's saying is that Tao and virtue that give life and nurtures life, they are valued by the living things. They are respected by the living things. And it is because of their very nature. That is, all living things want to continue on living. They value the life that is in them. That's the same for us. And when you map all of that to life, it just means that when you do good things for other people, they will respect you naturally. You don't need to demand the respect. And then lastly, a further correspondence we find from 14 down to 17. And what I pointed out before is that chapter 10 ends with the same 4 lines as the ending of 51. This is one of the rare reiterations across chapters in the Tao Te Ching, and it only further emphasizes the importance of these 4 lines. Produces but does not possess, acts but does not flaunt, nurtures but does not dominate. This is called mystic virtue. Overall, the image is of some entity that has done great things, that has created things or people, and the things can be living things, of course, when you give birth to children. Despite the great work of achieving things, producing things, maybe creating works of art, perhaps producing a scientific advance. All these achievements, the person, the entity, the individual does not let the accomplishments go to their heads. That is, the person is not possessive, not arrogant, doesn't need to flaunt, and does not dominate anyone. A very low-key, easygoing person. It's the mystic virtue because people just don't get it. People automatically think that if you have done all these great things, you should be taking credit. You should be flaunting it. you should be using that to further your own power. So those that follow the Tao who don't do any of that, it's mystifying to people. But the reason why Tao cultivators are not arrogant is because of the clarity of perception. It's because of how they see reality so clearly. They can tell there is no need to be possessive of what we create. There's no need to be domineering over those we nurture, because ultimately everything, and I do mean everything, everything belongs not to us, but to the Tao. Now, here's what I mean by that specifically, and this is a very important point. Many people have this, what we're just talking about right now, as a deathbed realization. What do I mean by that? Well, when they are about to pass on, that's what I meant by deathbed, they are about to leave everything behind. They realize they can take nothing with them. The truth dawns on them. Everything, the house, the cars, the material things, all the possessions, all the money, I take nothing with me because nothing belongs to me. This is true for all of us. We came into this world with nothing. We leave taking nothing with us. Our physical selves are transient. The Tao is eternal. Everything we think belongs to us will be left to the Tao. Even if you bequeath your belongings to your descendants, at some point, it goes back to the Tao. There are no exceptions to this rule, given a long enough time scale. So that is the wisdom, that is the truth, that is the realization on the deathbed. But then I say, there's no need for us to wait until the moment of death to have this realization. Right here, right now, we can stop ourselves from being overly possessive or domineering. The realization, there is no need to be arrogant of what our achievements or creative expressions happen to be, because we're all tapping into this universal source of intelligence and creativity, the Tao itself. So this is important enough that I want to share a visual with everyone to help everybody keep this concept in mind. When the wind blows, the grass takes a bow, like a performer on stage bowing to the audience, basking in the applause, the cheering, the praise, but the grass knows the wind is doing all the work. This is an image depicting something that I'm sure everybody has seen before. It is what happens when the wind picks up and the tall grass bends to the wind as a result. It really does kind of look like a performer on stage bowing to the audience. As the wind is blowing, the grass is bowing. The performer, there are many different kinds of performances that we have all seen. So the performer may be an actor, musician, acrobat, magician, comedian, and so on. Some kind of performance, some kind of entertainment or artistic expression. We have also seen many times a performer at the end of the performance receiving the applause, the accolades, especially if the performance was truly great, just basking in the cheering. And we've all been members of the audience. As members of the audience, we know that we're demonstrating our appreciation by applauding the wonderful expression of this creativity and artistry There's something divine about it. It feels like when it's really good, when it's transcendent, it feels like we can elevate ourselves, our spirit, through art at the highest level of human expression, human potential. You've been there, I've been there. We know what it's like when we enjoy a great performance. So the grass is bending, all the while knowing the wind is doing all the work. What does that mean? Well, the wind is a force of nature. We can't see the wind, but we can see the effect that the wind has. We can see the effect it creates. It is therefore a fitting metaphor for the Tao. You and I are like the grass. We come into this world with talents, aptitudes, potential, as well as a mind meant to be used for learning and creative thinking. These are gifts from the Tao, things that have been provided to us, not things that we have demanded. We're not entitled to them, and we cannot take them for granted. We're meant to use them. The gifts are meant to be fully utilized. I think that's simple to grasp. You've come into this world with certain talents. You're meant to use them to the fullest. Now, when we use the gifts to do good things in the world, we're fulfilling the potential and purpose of this lifetime. Therefore, in a very real sense, we are just furthering the Tao manifestation that is us. You be manifested, you in turn manifest your potential. That's how that works. So when the people cheer the good that we have done, to many, it may look like personal glory. But just by understanding how everything actually works, the way of the universe, the Tao, we know there is no reason for excessive pride or hubris. After all, we cannot take full credit because we know we only channel the Tao because every one of us is a conduit of an incredible power. We can feel it just as the grass feels the power of the wind. And that is why we know, like the grass knows, the wind is doing all the work. Now, to wrap it all up, we can summarize everything from this chapter to illustrate the connections among the different concepts from it. I have one more slide to bring it all together that I would like to share with you. And last time we talked about sharing your talents, your aptitudes, your gifts with the world. So whatever I'm sharing with you, I'm also hoping to share with the world in general. So this slide starts out this way, but it's going to get filled up as we bring in one concept after another. It is the one image that ties all the different ideas together. Now, you can see in the background of the slide, there's a depiction of the yin and yang symbol. Just like every time we see the symbol, we have the external yang side to the left and the internal yin side to the right. And as always, each side of the complementary duality contains an element of the other. So with this chapter, we begin actually on the right-hand side with the inward directed practices. There's embrace oneness without straying. This oneness is the Tao, and it is also your inner self, because you and the Tao are one. Then another inward directed practice is to be focused, to concentrate your energy and be relaxed like an infant. And the third internal practice is to cleanse the worldly view. The worldly view is the materialistic view. It is imperfect because it is fixated on material things. Now, one of the most important points we talked about previously was that all the inward directed practices are linked to the external ones, but the linkage is not explicitly stated. And typically, when you go through this chapter with other resources, this is never talked about. But I think it's important. So here's the first of the outward directed practices: to rule your life without manipulation. So the original line appears to be advice to the king to rule the kingdom without manipulation. So we know how that applies to you. Your life is your private kingdom. So it's connected to embracing oneness because the focus is on yourself. We talked about the one as your inner self because you are one with the Tao. So when you focus on that, you don't have a need to interfere with other people. You let other people focus on themselves while you focus on yourself. And therefore, no manipulation. The second external practice is to hold to the feminine principle in your thoughts. This is the one that's most easily seen as linked with the internal practice, because the infant represents softness, just like the feminine principle is all about the soft. Then, the third external practice, to see all directions, integrate all perspectives. This is linked to the cleansing of the worldview, which, as I mentioned, is fixated. It's narrowly focused on the materialistic perspective. So all of the above, everything that we're talking about here, are linked to the three elements of the mystic virtue. Let's run through them. Raising without domination is linked to practices in the external world because it is all about our interactions with people, the people that you help, that you guide, teach, or mentor. All the assistance, guidance, and mentoring is provided, should be provided free of the ego, and therefore free of the need to dominate. So that's raising without domination. Then we have achieving without arrogance, which incorporates the outward and inward practices. The achievement itself can be external. For instance, it can be an accomplishment in the material world, something you have done. It can also be internal, like an accomplishment only you are aware of in terms of spiritual refinement. You feel the difference. Other people may not be able to tell. In either case, whether external or internal, it must be done without the ego and therefore without the need to flaunt or brag. Whether it is something that other people can see or only you know, there's no need to flaunt or brag, like, hey everybody, look how enlightened I am. Lastly, we have bearing without possession. This is similar in incorporating the outward and inward practices. To bear something, to create something, to give rise to something can be external, like when you build something in the material world, invent something, invent a work or create a work of art, paint a painting, write a novel, write a poem. It can even be just like an organization cleaning up, decluttering of your environment, you're exerting change on the external world. It can be internal, such as new ideas, creating a new understanding for yourself, possessing a new insight. So whether it's external or internal, Lao Tzu would encourage you to share your creation and not hold on to them in a possessive way. And I hope that's exactly what I'm doing by sharing the Tao with everybody in this meeting. So this literally wraps everything up, the entire chapter. Whereas the previous slides, we talked about the last part in the correspondence. So now we're ready, I think, for the paraphrase of Tao Te Ching 10. So our purpose is just to restate the original in our own words. We want to demonstrate that we understand it by expressing it. So let's start with the first section. The first section are the inward directed practices we just talked about. And here's the paraphrase I want to present for that. To cultivate yourself internally, turn your gaze within and embrace your unifying essence. Can you do this without letting your attention wander? Manage your breathing and become aware of the energy coursing through your body. Can you relax yourself until you feel as soft and carefree as an infant? Lastly, release all concerns and worries about the material world. Can you let all of it go without exception? So, everybody, as you can see, where Lao Tzu talks about can you embrace the one without straying, I'm simply rephrasing that as embracing your unifying essence without letting your attention wander. It's the same idea, just different words. Now, of course, when we express them using modern language, there are quite a few people who have said that it makes the Tao much more accessible to them, and that's a good thing. Let's go to the section 2, which is all about the externally directed practices. Of course, I always want to remind people that in the external, there's always an element of the external. In the external, there's always mapping back to the internal. It's the yin and yang symbol at large. To cultivate yourself externally, you must manage your life and connect with your loved ones without meddling. In using your mind to solve problems and make plans, you must incorporate the gentleness and flexibility of the yin principle. As you observe the situation all around you, you must trust your feelings and not second guess yourself in overthinking the matter or end up with analysis paralysis. So here again, we're just restating what Lao Tzu said using words that are more, expressions that are more modern. And people talk about being gentle, being flexible, the soft approach. We can say the yin principle, be like an infant, the feminine principle, they are the same things. And so we now come to the very last section, in my opinion, the most important one, because it bears directly on mystic virtue. So how do we express that? How do we paraphrase it in a way that doesn't lose the original meaning? Here's what I would like to offer. We can live a great life if we learn from the Tao in creating every aspect of it. That means not being possessive of what we create, not being arrogant when we have accomplished things, and not being domineering toward those we have helped. It doesn't seem advantageous to live this way, and yet it is the sure path to greatness. It is the mystic virtue. So here, I want to comment specifically on advantageous. In life, just watching people, we know that most people try to hang on to every advantage. They want every edge they can get in life. In following mystery virtue, it seems like the Tao cultivator is giving up all the advantages, not taking advantage of having accomplished anything. So that is why it's difficult to understand. That's what Xuan means in Xuande. And even more perplexing is that those who follow mystery virtue end up doing really well in life. They do even better than their peers because they follow the Tao. Like rewards just seem to come, just materialize. They come out of nowhere from an unexpected direction. I've seen this miraculous, this manifestation, this magic of the Tao. It's happened to other people I know. It's happened to me whenever I follow mystic virtue. And I know that you can do the same for yourself and your own life. Lastly, I want to do a full circle that ties the very last line to the first two lines of this chapter. So at the very end of this chapter, Lao Tzu describes the characteristics of mystic virtue. So I represent it with just one line, but you remember what they are. When we link it back to the beginning, we see the description of the internally directed cultivation that forms the full circle. So this is a clear indication that the path of mastery to mystery virtue starts within. If you want to master this incredible thing, mystery virtue, that brings all kinds of goodness into your life, it isn't that difficult, but you must start internally. You must specifically embrace the oneness that is you without straying. What do I mean by straying? Well, think about the times when you are so bent on meddling and interfering with other people's business that your focus is off yourself. That is, you have strayed away from that focus on the oneness. So if you can correct that, center yourself, bring it back in again, then you're going to be well on your way to mastery. So I want to, because the starting point is so important, I want to single that out as the two lines that I sort of enshrine here. In holding the soul and embracing oneness, can one be steadfast without straying? I think that's a good reminder for all of us. It all starts with the oneness within. This is the way that we will continue our journey on the path. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.